say one particular statement before we start recording, and it's just a release. This opening establishes the release to use your likeness image in a video and or audio recording. You hereby give us the consent to B-Story Pictures or any subsequent company that houses the East Hammond The Village Grapevine project. Further, you acknowledge that you give us for gratis irrevocable rights in perpetuity, regardless of whether these materials are used for advertising, promotion, education, publicity, or any purpose on behalf of the company. The acquired digital files will remain the property of B-Story Pictures and subsidiaries or agents. Finally, you waive all rights, claims, or damages. The exploitation of this recording or history is acquired for the purposes of education, history, and to uplift the city of East Hammond and its residents. You attest that you fully understand the aforementioned. Do you agree?
Yes.
Okay. So I wanted to just start out by you just saying your name, your age, and what street you grew up on in East Hammond.
All right. Let's see. Ames Street, I think. Okay. So I start now?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Annie Hicks. I'm sorry.
Okay, and your age?
I messed up already because really my name is Annie Burns Hicks.
Okay. Well, you could just start over. Annie Burns Hicks.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. And then I have to tell my age. I am 79 years old.
Okay.
And I'm sorry.
And what street? What street did you grow up on?
I grew up on Ames Street in East Hammond.
Okay. So now, tell me a little bit about. Did you were you born in Hammond, or did you come with your parents?
No, I came with my parents because I was only 7 years old when we came north. And I think my mom probably told you why we came north. And
yes, and
so it was so that my parents wanted us to have a better life. So that's why we came north.
Okay, so can you tell me?
I was born in Mississippi.
Okay. Oh, in what city in Mississippi?
Just a little village called Enterprise.
Okay, Enterprise, Mississippi.
Yes.
Okay, my parents were born in Starkville, Mississippi.
Oh, okay.
Another little town. And so from your recollection, did you remember the incident where your dad decided to leave?
Yes, I do.
Okay, can you give me your recollection of that?
Yes, he worked in the cotton mill where he made clothes. I think they were for, I told you I'm 79 and
Oh, that's fine. Whatever you remember is fine.
Okay, I believe he made clothing for soldiers. I think that's it, but I know he worked at the cotton mill. And one day when he was going to work, he saw, he had to go across this bridge, and he saw two little boys hanging on each side of the bridge. And so it just hurt him to his heart. So when he got off from work, he talked to my mom, and he said, we can't stay down here. We're going to have to go north so that the kids, especially the boys, will have a better life. And then he told my mom the incident of the little boys that he saw hanging on each side of the bridge. And he was hanging there because he had asked a little white girl a question that they shouldn't have asked. And so then they were picked up and hanged there. And so my dad wrote some relatives that he had. He had a cousin in, he had a cousin in East Chicago, and he thought that was next to Chicago. Now, that was a part of Chicago, but it wasn't. It was Indiana. And they just called it East Chicago. And then he had one in Hammond, Indiana. And then he had one in Michigan, Detroit, Michigan. And he said later he really wanted to go to Detroit, but he promised God whichever one he heard from first, that's where he was going to go. So who was in Hammond, and the one that was in East Chicago didn't write it, but the one in Hammond wrote him, and the one in Michigan, and they both mailed their letters on the same day. But Hammond was closer to Michigan than
East Chicago.
East Chicago didn't write him at all.
Oh, okay.
Hammond was closer to. Oh dear.
Well, you said Michigan or Detroit.
And then I can't remember the other one I said. Hammond was closer to. Oh dear, I just can't remember.
Well, you said three of them. You said East Chicago, Hammond, and Detroit.
Okay, East Chicago, Hammond, and Detroit. Okay, well, Hammond was closer to East Chicago. It was closer to Hammond was closer to. Oh dear.
Well,
not East Chicago, because East Chicago didn't even answer. It must have been 4.
Okay, must have been 4. Okay.
Yeah, East Chicago one did not answer at all.
But didn't he just say he wanted to go with whatever the first one?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and that just happened to be Hammond.
Yes.
Okay. And so when how did it happen? When he just did he just pack up in the middle of the night, or did he just over time he said, okay, well, did he go first to scout out?
Yes, he went first. Yes, he came to Hammond first, and because he wanted to find a place to live and get a job. So that's what he did. So he came first, and so then the rest of us came later after he got situated, after he found a place to live and got a job. And then we came.
Oh, okay. Now, how was it when he was in Hammond and you and your mom and everybody was in Mississippi? I mean, was it, without him actually overseeing and stuff, were you guys living in fear because of what transpired as far as the kids hanging, the lynching?
No, we weren't afraid or anything, but my dad and my mom did get us out pretty fast. But we weren't scared or anything.
Oh, okay. All right. It was just, at that time, what year was that, by the way? Do you remember?
Me? Oh, I can't remember. I know I was born in 37, so it was a little after that. Well, what did I say? I was 5 years old.
Well, if you were born in 37, 5 years old, that must have been 1942?
Something around that, you know.
Okay. And during, in 1942, around there, it was, were there a lot of lynchings and a lot of dissonance that you guys saw? Well, I guess especially in the South.
Yes, but we didn't see all of them. You know, I think that was the first one my dad saw, and so that just touched him, and so it got him too excited about, doing something about it. So, but we didn't see a lot of it, but we heard about them and things like that.
Okay.
And I'm sorry I'm messing up on
that. No, that's fine. Anything you say is gold to me, so it's all good. So when when he came to Hammond, do you remember his first job?
Yes, it was at in a train complex, and it was called. And so he worked out there first as a custodian, and then he moved up to working at the one of the offices of the train complex. But he didn't have a good job. He was a custodian there too. First, he was a custodian at the place where the men who lived or worked there, where they would eat, and some of them lived there, and so he would take care of that property. And then after a while, they moved him up to the moved him up to the train office.
The office. Okay.
Yes, but he didn't. Again, he worked as a custodian there too.
Okay.
But he got more money, and it was a better job for him.
Mm-hmm.
And then after he moved up to being a custodian in the train center, where the men were. Then after that, they moved him to the yard, like cutting the grass and keeping things up on the yard and on the outside.
Okay.
And then they would post different jobs, and he would try to get in on them. They wouldn't move him up, but finally they did move him up to the post office in this train center.
Oh, okay.
He liked that a lot, and but he still kept on trying to move up. And then he was called to pastor a church in Hammond. And after he got that, he still worked, but he moved, up to a house, and it was better there for us and close to the school. And so then we lived there for a long time until he was able to purchase a house. And
okay. So were the initial jobs that he got, in terms of custodian responsibilities at the train yard, was that way more money than what he was making in Mississippi, or was it comparable?
Well, he was still in Mississippi. I mean, no.
No, he moved after he left Mississippi. He came to Hammond, and then he worked in the train yards, and then he moved up to the post office. So, or the post office at the train yard.
The post office was part of the train.
Yes, okay. at the train center. But I'm just wondering if those monies were way more monies than
Not
Mississippi.
way more.
They were just more.
Just a little more. But the main thing he liked was it was a better job as far as he felt. It made him feel a little bit better.
Oh, safer, yeah, because of the lynchings. Okay.
And not just safer, but more. He just felt better working there than he did in the other. And I'm sorry, I'm not doing a good job.
Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine. So I get it was more, more of a prideful thing working there than in Mississippi under those conditions.
Oh, yes. And like you said, he was safer because nobody was going to come in there and lynch him or anything like that.
Right. And so after renting the house, you guys then bought a house in Hammond somewhere.
Yes, and that's a big story, too, because there were not very many black people living in Hammond at that time. And they had a paper going around that nobody was supposed to rent or sell to black people. So then he worked on that, and he knew some lawyers and different people, even white people, Caucasians, and he worked with, not a credit union, but similar to a credit union. Oh, I don't know.
Okay, so he actually, after seeing this paper that said you can't rent to blacks or sell to blacks, he started to kind of galvanize all the power players to try to change that rule. Okay.
And he had let's see. He had a banker that was pretty good, but after, I'm probably jumping a little ahead.
Oh, no, that's good. Go ahead.
But after I grew up and we started working on the first black teacher, when he went into the bank one day to do some kind of business, he said the black bank teller was working with him, and she was trying to hide some paper. So he said, "Let me see that paper." And when she showed it to him, it said, "Do not do business with Albert Brown." And so then he had to work on that too, because the guy who was talking to her was one of the members of the school board.
Oh.
So he didn't want any of his employees doing any kind of business with my dad.
Well, too bad they didn't have camera phones there. You could have taken a picture of that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as a document. So the reason why he didn't want anyone to work with your dad was because of the situation with the housing, and was he more considered like stirring up trouble because he wanted to get equal rights for blacks?
Well, my dad was.
Yes. No, but I'm asking why that banker did not want to work with Albert.
Okay, he didn't want to work with him because, like I said, I'm stepping a little probably ahead of myself. He was on the school board. In fact, he was president of the school board.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't want any. He didn't want to get. I'm sorry. I'm 79, and I guess go and come. He didn't want any trouble, or he didn't want to integrate the schools. He definitely didn't want to integrate the teachers. So it was all about the education.
Okay.
The reason he didn't want to work with my dad, but like I said, that's a little.
Right. Do you remember that person's name?
Yeah, it was Charlie Scott.
Okay, Charlie.
And at first the first time my dad called him, he was very friendly. He said, "Oh, Burns," he said, "I think you're Irish or something." So Daddy just laughed and said, "Well, that's what they say. I don't know." So at that time, he didn't know that my dad was African American.
So he was giving him the benefit of the doubt because he thought he was Irish, but then when he showed up being black...
Yes, he completely changed, yes.
Okay, so Charlie Scott was a banker as well as on the school board.
Yes.
And, you were saying that he did not want the schools integrated, but was this after 1954, the Brown versus Board of Education?
Yes.
Okay, so really by law, he should have been integrating the schools.
Yes, he should have, yes. Well, the schools, I guess, were integrated because they went to whatever school was in their
district.
In their district. See, I'm getting it all mixed up. But, yes, so Hammond were against the law.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so before we get to your story, as far as the integrating the teachers, so your father, sounds like was a rebel rouser, wanted to the equal rights and this, that, and the other, and did he do more stuff when he was a preacher? Or,
yes.
Okay, and like what?
But he wasn't really noisy at it.
Mm-hmm.
He was very respectful,
mm-hmm.
but yet he still worked with people and that he could, and he needed to see what needed to be done, and then he would find people that would help him to get what he wanted to get done. So one of those was helping housing. So after he worked with one was called a federal. What are they called? They're like credit unions, but they're called federal. I can't remember.
So basically, it was an organization that helped finance housing for people.
Yes. And then after he started working with him, a lot of people who lived in East Hammond and who wanted to own homes would go to that. I think it was called First Federal.
Mm-hmm.
And they would go there, and the First Federal would help them. Would give them loans and help them to, get housing. So that's why it grew so much that East Hammond became largely African American.
Because then they opened up their doors to black people as far as
and then after they opened up their doors, then other businesses started too, because they wanted some of the money.
Right. But it's often been said that blacks had a lot of I guess capital, not a lot, but they spent their money, and just like the bus boycotts in Birmingham, without that money, the downtown area, the bus systems, and people were hurting because blacks weren't spending their money.
Right.
So just like today, if people see blacks have a lot of capital to spend on whatever, they want a part of that.
Right.
And it seems like also one of the largest assets that a person would have is their home, and if people if the powers that be restrict you from getting a home, that restricts your asset potential or your net worth of how much you're really worth. So and that was a redlining, so to speak, of certain districts. Like they wouldn't rent to here, wouldn't own here, this, that, and the other. So that's one of the ways that keep you down. So Reverend Burns actually infiltrated that system in Hammond, Indiana, and kind of lifted up black people by setting that up with First Federal. It was First Federal. That was an actual bank, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it was an actual bank in Hammond. Okay. And so would people go to Reverend Burns and say, hey, I need a house and help me out, hook me up? Okay. So do you remember any other things because he sounds, he was more of a person who incited change in the community. What were some of the other things you think, or do you remember him doing?
Well, we had to go to Gary to bury people. So he got with the Caucasian Ministerial Alliance, and he told them. So they started helping him to work on. I don't know exactly what all they did, but I know that now we can bury anywhere.
Okay. So it was forbidden for black people to be buried in white graveyards that had a lot of white people in it, or white graveyards.
Yeah, in any part of Hammond.
In any part of Hammond. Okay, and do you remember which graveyard opened up and accepted black people who passed on?
First, I don't know. I just know that they did open up.
Okay.
And now we can bury over everywhere in Hammond if we want to.
Okay. So when you said Gary, you had to be buried in Gary, so Gary was much more progressive than Hammond?
Oh, yeah, because Gary, a lot of people, black people came from the South to Gary because of the steel mills.
Right.
And so there were a lot more black people in Gary than there were in Hammond.
Okay. So that whole process of breaking down the barriers in Gary actually happened a little sooner than Hammond.
Yes, it did. Quite a bit sooner.
Okay. And it seemed like Reverend Burns was one of those key people who helped that process. Do you know, did he have any close associates that he would work with? I know you said the ministerial board, even the white people in the ministry.
Well, that's the one he joined. I don't even know if the black people had one of those right then, but he joined the white ministerial alliance. And then he would bring some of his problems to them, and then they would help him to do what they need to do.
Okay. So even though they were white, do you think they really helped because they were rooted in God and in the spiritual, associations, as opposed to just a white person in different companies?
Yes, that's what I think. Yes.
Okay. So who else was working with Reverend Burns at the time to break down some of these doors? Do you remember any?
Yeah.
Like, was it Reverend Parrish or anybody else like that?
Well, Reverend Parrish did later, but when it first started to be broken down, he did all that by himself and by people that he could meet and who were able to help him. But then later, Reverend Parrish did join in, and he helped him a lot.
Okay.
And Pearline Jenkins. Did anybody tell you about her?
Yeah. But okay. Tell me a little bit what you recollect from.
Well, I don't know a lot, but I just know that she was the secretary of the church. And then when he was called to become the pastor, then she worked closely with him because she was the secretary of the church, and then he was the pastor. So some of the things that he did, she just worked along with him, and then pretty soon she became the president of the NAACP. And but he had helped her to get into that position.
Okay. So the church that she was a secretary of, was that Mount Zion?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And so, do you think her activist or progressiveness was inspired by Reverend Burns because she saw him doing everything? That kind of stuff?
Yes, not only did she see him doing it, she worked with him on some of them.
Okay. Okay, she worked.
Because she was the church secretary and he was the pastor, so they worked together on a lot of things. And so evidently she was motivated to, get the NAACP working. They did have an NAACP, but it wasn't doing very much. So then when she got in there, she started to build it up.
Okay. Did her association with NAACP help Reverend Burns do some of his stuff?
Yes, because they were working together.
Okay, all right. So that was a powerful union between the two people. I mean, he had a big church, and then she had NAACP. Okay. And then later, did they build any other alliances with any other community activists? Like one person you said was John Parrish, Reverend Parrish. And were there anybody else, do you think, got together and just said, hey, look, we need more change?
Oh, yeah, let's see. There was another guy, too. He was head of NAACP, and then he started doing more with Pearline Jenkins, but I can't remember his name. I don't know. Who are some other people you talked to?
Well, I'm just wondering if Jewel Alexander was one of those people who helped him.
He helped him a little, but Jewel didn't really like him, so he wouldn't really work a lot with him. But my dad would just pull people in that he thought could do something. And then, then a lot of times they would end up, helping him with different things. So that's kind of the way Jewel was.
Okay.
And this is my idea, so
right.
It's probably, I don't know.
Do you know of any other kind of major hurdles that they had and that they overcame? Because, maybe the union between Pearline and Reverend Burns, any other big thing that they accomplished or broke down a door of some sort?
Okay. I'm trying to think now. I can't think. If I could just think of that other guy that had been president of NAACP, and I can't remember his name.
Well, I can find it. But once he was the president before Perline?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So once I'll find that name out. But so what do you remember of any accomplishments or what he did to break some doors down?
Let me see.
And how
I
was? Go ahead.
just can't think of it. What is that? There's another family that did work. I can't think of them.
Well, let's talk about the work that they did, and then maybe it'll jar your memory as far as what their accomplishments were. Like what kinds of things that these other families do to break these barriers down.
Oh, I just can't think. Eunice was telling me that she had told you about another family. What was it?
Yeah, there were various people who came in and out and did various things. Well, the fact that Hammond was, I guess, primarily Polish, or
yes,
and people I guess came from Slovakia or Czechoslovakia.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the general. When you guys came there and you were one of the first black people there, that's what the makeup of the community was, basically Polish.
Yes.
Okay. And so when the first blacks moved in, and I know you guys were one of the first or the pioneers of that. What was the reception? I mean, was it open? Did they welcome you with open arms? Or was there any dissonance, or was it simply wonderment? They didn't know what to expect.
Well, it just seemed that once this idea they couldn't sell to African Americans, once that was broken, they just seemed to get along with everybody because we just all lived together then. We lived, there were some next door to us on both sides of us,
Mm-hmm.
and there were some across the street from us. They had a little store in front of us. They had a little bakery down on the corner,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody just got along. And they didn't, fight or fuss or any. Well, they were talking in a different language, so we didn't always know what they were saying. We learned a few
Polish words.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but one I could lead. I remember for a long time, but I can't remember now. Eskadoo something. And so we always knew that, and we knew a few others, But everything was just working really good. Now, the businesses were the things that weren't too good, but they all had little businesses, and there was another one that my mother didn't want us to go in. It was a little candy store, and the guy that owned it had the best candy, but his hands are filthy dirty, so my mom didn't want us to go there, but his candy was so good, we would sneak in there.
Oh, this is a Polish guy, huh?
Yeah.
And this was on Ames Street.
Well, this was right near Ames Street. It ran across this street that I'm talking about now ran across, Conkey and...
It was like either Tapper or Howard or one of those.
Yeah, moved across Ames and Howard, Tapper, I think. But we didn't have any trouble. It was the businesses then.
Oh, okay.
Once the residential was kind of, opened up and everything, then it was the businesses. Oh yeah, and those people though, they always open up business. That's right, because on Conkey Street there was a drugstore, and when we first moved there, it was a place that had chickens. You could Go there and they'll kill a chicken for you.
Okay. Oh, so now you're naming some of the black businesses on Conkey Street. Businesses owned by black people.
Okay, let's see. Yes, but there were, yeah.
So you can pick your own live chicken and they kill it in front of you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Well, that can't get any fresher than that. So,
so this guy had a candy store. Then there was a black lady 2 doors down from him who had a candy store.
Okay. What year do you think this was?
It was still in the 40s.
Still in the 40s?
Or 50s. Going into the 50s, I guess.
Okay, 40s, early 50s.
Mm.
Okay. And so, do you remember a bunch of stores owned by black proprietors on Conkey Street?
Well, there wasn't a bunch, but there was a couple of liquor stores.
Mm-hmm.
And 1 or 2, oh dear, 1 or 2 places where they, not liquor stores, but...
Were they like markets, grocery stores, kind of thing?
I know that people didn't want their kids.
Oh, taverns.
Taverns and other things. I know people didn't want their kids going in there because my mom didn't even want us on Conkey Street.
Okay, so that was the starting of the kind of the bad elements on Conkey Street in terms of the liquor and the hanging out and
the hanging out, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But there wasn't Ames Street. Ames didn't have that.
Right.
It was Conkey.
Yeah, and it was, my understanding is it was a major thoroughfare where people would just go. It was the street where it was like our downtown, but it wasn't downtown Hammond, but it was East Hammond. Mm-hmm. But it was our little where you can buy stuff or do stuff.
Yes.
And so, what do you remember of Brooks House, which was right there?
Oh, Brooks House was good. It was run by Caucasian Baptist Church, and they had different things where you could go there and do crafts, and it had a library. You could go in there and check books out or sit in there and read. And they had a camp, and they would, like, if you can go in and wash some walls or something like that and earn money to pay for your camp. And the camp was really nice, but it was way out. But Brooks House was, it was on Conkey Street. It was on the other half of Conkey. Only one half of Conkey was really what we called bad.
Mm-hmm. That was like the 1100 block?
Let's see, 11. Yes, it was. You got some good information, yes.
Yeah. I'm just trying to get it firsthand from you, though. And so did your mom let you guys hang out at Brooks House?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Because if you went to Brooks House, you didn't stand out on the street and stuff. You would go in and you would do stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, she would let us go there. Plus, she knew the people in charge because they kept it nice inside and had good things going on inside.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Now, was that the time period when Miss Durr was a library, or was that before Miss Durr was a librarian?
That was before. That was before she was a librarian.
Oh, okay. Okay. And so the fact that was orchestrated or originated by a Baptist church, but a white Baptist church.
Mm-hmm.
Incidentally, was that the church that's in downtown Hammond now, that big Baptist church?
No.
Was that different?
Yeah, the one downtown in Hammond, that's like a, let's see, it's like a Southern they they didn't really want us down there, but then after a while, they would come out and pick some of our kids up and take them downtown to their church, force them to join church. So that was, when that started, that was way, how late was it? 60s, 70s, 70s, 80s. That was long, time.
Long after that, okay. Okay. So let's now get towards your going to school. And first of all, did you go to what schools did you go to? Starting out with elementary.
I went to Maywood School.
Okay, you went to Maywood. Okay.
But I was in junior high because we lived in Hessville before that, and Hessville had, at the time we moved in, had two black families. One didn't have any kids, and then we had, kids, and so we had some trouble out there going to school. But that was not in East Hamlin.
Right. And trouble just because you were I guess integrating a all-white neighborhood.
Yes.
And then
my brother, my brother who's next to me would get in fights almost every day because they would call him names and he just wouldn't take it. So then,
what was your brother's name? I mean,
he's still living, Al.
Oh, that was okay. Al Burns. Okay. And at what point? Now that's when you were renting a house in Hessville, right?
Yes. Well, I don't think we rented. I think we belonged to the railroad.
Oh, okay.
And I think because my dad was working at the railroad, he got the house free.
Oh, okay. Well, that was almost a good deal if the people were cool.
Yeah, the people. In fact, it was sitting out there by itself. And but things were not as bad as they are now, because I remember it was, I told you that was a railroad center. And so there were these guys the tramps would ride the freight trains. And they would come and they would get off and they'd come over to our house, and our house was the only one there. And they'd ask my mom for some money, so I remember a lot of times she would give them 10 cents, and she said, well, you can get yourself a cupcake. And so they said, no, ma'am, we're going to buy us a can of peas or either some corn. And they never tried to bother us or anything. So I remember that. But that was not in East Hamlin. That was before we moved to East Hamlin.
Okay.
And then they would let us play on the yard of the office, and then they would come out and watch us play, and we'd play all kind of, games out there, and they'd come and look and everything. That was kind of fun.
Were these white or black people who were riding the trains?
I never did see a black person riding the train.
Okay.
Always white.
Oh, this is all white people, and so they felt comfortable in coming to a black family asking for whatever, 10 cents or whatever. Okay.
Well, they would just ask for money, and that's all my mom had.
Right. Well, that was awfully, even back at that time, philanthropic of you guys, to even though you were getting mess from the neighbors in Hessville for being, integrating that area, but still have that open heart. But since he was led to Hammond area, and apparently he told God, hey, look, the first letter comes, I'm going there. He already had that in his spirit. So,
yes.
Right, okay. So you went to Maywood, and after you went to school.
We went to Hardin. Before we moved, we went to Hardin School.
Hardin School, okay.
And I want to tell you one incident we had. We had to go, maybe about 10 blocks or more to get to the crossing place, which was called Kennedy Avenue. So sometimes we would take a shortcut to school. And so then some people were getting together to set our house on fire. So let's see.
So they wanted you out of there so much until they started to set your house on fire?
Yes, but one of the people at the church, one of the people that we knew at the church was a good friend of the mayor.
Mm-hmm.
So he told the mayor, and so he and the mayor and the, who else got together? He and the mayor and the police chief got together. So they would take my brother and I and my little sister who was next to my brother. The police would take us to school in the morning and bring us home in the evening until they got it straightened out. And then after that, we had some good friends. In fact, I still have a friend who now lives in, where does she live? In Colorado. And she calls me more than I call her. And we're still friends and everything.
And that was the house in Hessville that they were...
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm going to get away from that now.
Okay. No, that's these are good recollections of incidents that color the time period and era of how things were. So any of those stories are actually good stories, just so we know how it relates to society at the time.
Oh, okay.
So all good. So from Hardin School, then you went to Maywood.
Yes.
Okay, and then how was it at Maywood? How many blacks were there? Or was it? How integrated was it at the time?
Oh, it was quite integrated. Yeah, there were a lot more there than there were in Hessville.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't have any trouble at Hammond High.
Or Maywood.
Or Maywood.
Okay, and so Maywood, then, since you said Hammond High, I assume you went to Hammond High.
Yes.
Okay. And what was if you could estimate a percentage of blacks to other nationalities, how many blacks was at Hammond High School at the time?
Oh, let's see, I don't know. It wasn't really that many. I can't.
What year did you graduate from Hammond High?
1955.
55. So some 51 to 55. That was just a period where there weren't that many blacks at Hammond High.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you were one of the first people who actually went there, and so were you? Was Tech going on at the time, Hammond Tech?
Yes, because one of my sisters went to Tech. She was a great art. She was good at art, and so my mom wanted us all to go to Hammond High because it was like a college prep, and so she wanted to go there, and so my mom let her go ahead and apply and put in her. So she let her go ahead and go to Tech because there was more boys, and so we later found out she went to Tech because of the boys.
Now, who was that? Was that Eunice?
It wasn't Eunice, no. It was one named Margaret. She is
Margaret. Okay.
She is something else.
Okay. So you found out that was the trade school, and all the boys were at the trade school. I get it.
Now there were a few. We weren't the first black kids to go to Hammond High.
Mm-hmm.
There were. I can't figure out how many, what percentage. I don't know, maybe 10%, maybe not even quite that many.
Okay, so from 5 to 10% black occupancy at the school when you were there in between 51 and 55.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and at what point, because you were at a college prep type of the school, Hammond High, at what point did you decide that you wanted to be an educator, or did you decide that?
I decided that when I was in Hillsville.
Oh, okay.
Because I never saw anybody look like me as a teacher.
Okay.
And so that's what I always said. I'm going to be the first black teacher. I used to always say that.
Okay. And so you set a goal in elementary school.
Yes.
Okay. and just followed through with that. And then, well, how did Hammond High prepare you?
Well, I had thought they prepared me quite well. In fact, I had thought that the whole school prepared me well until I came back to, and I wanted to teach there. Because sometimes I had to speak, and I would say I never could figure out how a school could give me an education, not give it to me, but help me with an education, and then when I came back to teach there, didn't think I could teach there. I said I could never figure that out.
So they felt that they gave you a A1 quality education, but then when you wanted to teach there, they felt that you weren't educated enough to teach there. Okay. There's a contradiction in terms right there. And so once you tried to apply, what happened? They just flat out turned you down?
Yes. What happened is I went to Ball State because I had done well in Hammond, in the Hammond school system. So I said, well, I want to go to Ball State. And so then it was just a college, but not a university. So I went there, and so I had good grades and everything there, and I enjoyed it. So I asked to do student teaching in Hammond, and so I was granted permission to do it there. So after I had been there a while, I asked Mr. Caldwell, could I come in and talk to him and thank him for letting me come in and student teach. So he said,
and this was student teaching at specifically Hammond High?
No, Maywood.
Oh, Maywood, okay.
And so I had permission to do that, so I came, and the supervisor came first, and after I got there, she wanted to know how I was doing and how I liked it and everything, and I did. And so she asked me, was there anything I needed? I told her yes, I needed an application. She said, okay, so she sent it to me a few days later, and I filled it out and sent it right back in, and I never heard from it. So then I asked...
what was her name again? What was her name?
Let's see, Ann Hopman.
Ann Hopman. Okay.
And there was another one, too, who was good, but I can't remember her name. So then I asked Mr. Caldwell, could I come and see him? That was the superintendent. So he said yes. So I went in and I talked to him and I thanked him for letting me student teach and everything. So then I said, Mr. Caldwell, it's such a thrill to teach here. I really would like to teach here when I graduate because I was a senior. And he said, no, we're not ready for a colored teacher yet. So then I left, and when I got home, my mom and dad said, well, how did it go? How did it go? I said, well, he said I couldn't, Hammond's not ready for us.
Colored teacher.
A colored teacher. So my dad said, did he say that? Yes, sir, he did. So he said, well, you make another appointment with him. Don't tell him I'm coming, but I'm coming with you. So I said, okay. So I waited until it was almost time for my student teaching to be over. So so he told me to come in on a Saturday morning. So then I told my dad. So we went in, and he didn't know my dad was coming.
Right.
So we went in, and we started to talk, and I started to thank him and everything. My dad stopped me. He said, Mr. Caldwell, did you really say that Annie cannot teach because she's colored? He said, well, Reverend, it's not that I said that. That's what my Board of Education is saying. He said, they won't let me. They have my hands tied. They won't let me hire a colored teacher. He said, but as soon as they let me do this, I will give Annie a job. So I was coming out of school in 3 years, so I had to go back to summer school. So I went back to Ball State, and my dad, even though he's a quiet kind of guy, he will just keep messing with you, like mailing, writing you letters and all that. So he kept writing letters to Mr. Caldwell, and finally Mr. Caldwell said, Reverend, if Annie gets a job, it'll be over my dead body. So when I came back from school, he just said that to me. He said it to my dad. And when I came back to school to see him again to see if Hammond was ready for me, he said, "No, Hammond's not ready for you yet." And then he died in a few days. So everybody was saying, "See, he didn't have it." And they laughed. I said, don't laugh about it." And they said, "See, he should have never said that." He said it'd be over his dead body, and it was.
Okay.
So then they kept on trying to get a new superintendent, and nobody wanted it because it was a hot seat.
It was a hot seat because of the racial divide.
Yes.
Okay, so
because that was going on right then.
Mm-hmm. So when you say it was going on, I thought it was just letters that Reverend Burns sent, but he made it public though.
Well, after Mr. Caldwell died, yes, he made it public. He said because everybody wanted to know what was going on, so he told them that he had been writing them and everything, and he said if I got a job, it'd be over his dead body. Yeah, he made it public.
Okay.
So then after that, people kept saying, "Well, he didn't have no business saying it." And they would be laughing. I said, "Don't laugh about it. It's not funny."
Was this in the paper, too?
Yes. It was in the Chicago papers and Hammond papers and Gary papers.
Was the Chicago Defender happening at the time?
Yes, and the Chicago Defender wrote some things about it.
Oh, okay. And so at what point did... So after you got out of school and you said, "Is it time yet?" and he said no, and then he passed away, at what point did you guys take action, or legal action, or any action?
Well, I was studying that this morning. We went back to see Mr. Caldwell again to see if he had changed his mind. And so my dad went with me. And he hadn't changed his mind. So then when we came out of talking to him, my dad said, "Well, now, Annie, this wall has to come down, and you're the one who has to do it." So I said, "Yes, sir." So then he and my mom and I went to see a lawyer. His name was the Walker, McCleskey, Dawson, and Hatcher. Those were the
Walker, McCleskey, Dawson, and Hatcher. Okay. All right, and so that's the law firm. Was that law firm in Hammond, Gary, Chicago?
East Chicago.
Okay, it was in East Chicago. And so did all of the lawyers actually handle you, or was there one particular lawyer that...
Well, Henry Walker and Hatcher did most of it. Hatcher was just coming out of law school in Valparaiso.
Okay. Were any of these black lawyers?
They were all black.
Okay, all black. Okay. Okay. And were they just regular civil rights attorneys, or were they litigators, or what? Do you know what kind of? Well, actually, if you're gonna file a complaint or a suit, they would have to be litigators then, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm just asking, so I'm just...
I don't know.
Okay. So once they filed a suit or a complaint, was that big news?
Yes. And that was in some of the Chicago papers, too, like the Sun and Times, and I don't know what other.
Okay. So were you guys labeled troublemakers because you wanted to, or how was the reception of that suit with white and black people? I'm sure black people liked it, but go ahead, tell me.
Okay. Let me see. I had checked it out this morning, and I took some notes this morning so I wouldn't be so crazy.
No, you're fine.
Okay. Just 1 minute. Let me see what I had put down here. Okay, just 1 minute.
Okay.
I know the
Do you have those articles too, by the way?
I have some of them, and I have some depositions. I would want to know, did you want any of those? Because I never turned them over to the library. I didn't know how to fix them and do them, but I have some depositions. I have some different things, because I did a few speeches on it. I got some of my old speeches.
Oh, yeah, all that. Actually, in terms of turning that into a PDF, a downloadable PDF, in terms of that's a historical document. Yeah, not just because of Hammond, but in general, because it was the first integrations of not just students, but like teachers, and that's significant in our world. So, but yeah, so at one point we'll talk about that.
Okay, so I can start getting that together. So anyway, I had taken a job in Gary because they were ready to pick me up at Ball State. And I told them no, so I had a job in Gary. So after my dad told me this, I gave up my job in Gary. And that's when my mom and dad hired this lawyer. And so they filed a civil suit in the United States District Court in violation of my civil rights under the 14th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States and Article 1 of the Indiana Constitution.
Okay.
And let's see, what else? Okay. This was in protection to all citizens. And so...
Do you remember that year? The year that was filed?
I do have it down. It's not on this paper I took this morning, but I have it down. I can pull it right out sometime and give it to you. In fact, I got a lot of stuff I could give to you because I just didn't know what to do with it.
Okay.
So let's see, what else did I say here? Volunteer. Oh, and so R.B. Miller became the superintendent because nobody wanted it.
Okay.
And let's see. And I reached my goal of having a job in Hammond.
Okay. So did let me just back up as far as the suit. Did it actually go to trial, or did they settle?
Well, they had several. I don't know if you call them a trial, but
hearings.
Pardon me?
The hearings.
Hearings, yeah. But after several of those, they gave me my job.
Okay, so you actually didn't have a trial with a jury and this, that, and the other?
No, I didn't have all that.
Okay, so after...
But it was exciting enough.
Oh, yeah, no, just to get that. So at the hearings, they deemed that it was unconstitutional and against your 14th Amendment right in Article 1 of the Indiana Constitution that you, being a citizen, had the right to...
the protection?
Yeah, you had the protection to go in to actually teach because you were qualified. Did they try to disavow your, I'm talking about the opposing counsel. Did they try to say that you weren't qualified and this, that, and the other?
No, and it's surprisingly that once I got into the schools, I went to every single meeting that they would call. And so I went to one meeting, and the opposing lawyer's son was on the same board that I was on. And so I said, well, you probably don't want to talk to me because your dad lost the case due to me. He said, wasn't that silly? And he said he didn't think his dad, should have done all that because So anyway, he didn't like that. He didn't agree with it. But nobody knows. So he didn't. So that guy did not. And his name was Baumberger.
That was the opposing counsel, Baumberger.
Yes, Bomberger, and he didn't oppose it. So.
Okay. And so once you finally were deemed a person who can go and actually get a job at this was Maywood School, right?
Yes, they put me at Maywood.
Okay, at Maywood School. How was the reception with all the white teachers? You being the first black teacher there, how did they receive you?
It was good because I was scared. I wasn't, I'm not going to say I wasn't scared. I was scared. And I was also scared of some of the people in the neighborhood because it was still pretty much white.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would come in and line up my wall for about an hour to see if I knew what I was doing. Then they would go home. And they did that for about a week.
Mm-hmm.
Then they didn't do it anymore. And then the teachers, they treated me in the lounge. You'd never know that nobody had wanted me there. You'd never know. So then one of my friends, who was a new teacher,
mm-hmm.
told me, they are really kind of scared of you. Said because when a new Caucasian teacher comes in, they give them they can either come to Maywood, especially in the elementary grades,
mm-hmm.
or they could go to another school. So she said, I chose to come to Maywood. She said, so they kind of scared of you. Because one of the teachers said, and she had taught me, this teacher had taught me, said, that little Annie everybody thinks she's so nice and everything, said, but she is still to the bone. And so she said, now, Annie, you keep them thinking that you're still and that you don't give up or anything like that. So they would just treat me really nice. Now, where I had trouble is, like I said, I would go to every meeting and I'll get on every committee. And when I go to some of the other schools in parts of Hammond, the kids, if they're out there playing, sometimes they play after school, they would call me names. So I would just go on in and tell the teachers who were in charge of the meeting, and they would just go out there, and talk to them. But with the teachers, I didn't have any problem. They just really, Now one time right after I got in there, they had a little some kind of reward they would give kids who had really been outstanding in their class. And so this particular year, it went to a black student. So this one teacher came in to the lounge and she said, how could they do that? How could they give this DAR to AC? I just wonder why. And nobody said anything. Everybody was real quiet. They said, oh, Annie, I'm so sorry. I said, no, don't be sorry. You can think whatever you want to think. And so then after that, nobody ever said anything to me. So then pretty soon they were real kind to me then because we would go to each other's houses sometime, like for lunch. So they invited me to their house and, to go to lunch and all that. And they were real nice to me. And then after I've been there a while, and the principal have to leave early or something, he'd let me do the playground duty after school, and it was real nice.
So at how long do you think it took before they looked at you as a teacher and not as a black teacher?
I don't know. It probably took almost a year. But then after I got in there and had been in there a good while, well, I had been there a really long time, when Paul Walker, I think you talked to him already.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
Paul Walker said he and some of the boys would get together and they would come over to Maywood and look in my window to see how a black teacher looked. That was funny to me.
Did a lot of the black kids want to be in your class because, you're black?
Yes, and one little boy just came one day when we were opening school. He just came and sat down in my classroom, and I said, well, honey, you're not on my list. And he stayed there until they came and got him.
See, that familiarity of just, learning from somebody of like nature is powerful. So let me ask you this. Now you broke that barrier, like Reverend Burns had said. Honey, we got to break this wall down. And so you broke that down, and you eventually were received just like every other teacher at Maywood. What was it? What impact did it have on the school board? Because now they have opened up the door for black people to come in, or your case opened up the door for black people.
They just start hiring black people, and then my principal said, "Thank you so much for giving me a chance to get a job." I said, "No, they interviewed you and they saw you right." He said, "Yeah, but if you hadn't opened this up, I'd still be over in Chicago."
So
everybody's just real nice, and then my parents, they made all my brothers and sisters sit down, and they said, "Now, when you're at school, you do not call her Annie. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir." "You call her Mrs. Hicks." So now, do you know now? All of my sisters and brothers call me Miss Hicks, and when we're at church or outside, when they call me, they say, "Well, why the heck they call you Miss Hicks?" I said, "Because my parents made them call me that, and they can't get out of it now." They all call me Miss Hicks right now.
Oh, people probably ask, "Was that your sister?"
They do. People don't know. But the people who know, they said, "Oh, why y'all call her that?" And Eunice was one, too. She still called me Miss Hicks.
That's funny.
And I tell them, "Don't call me Miss Hicks, call me Annie." And so they'll do it for a while, and then they fall right back calling me Miss Hicks.
Well, that was a very impactful time period and era, and that any door that's broken down. I mean, so I would assume that there's a lot of people who directly or indirectly owe you maybe a thanks because of what you did. Because without those doors broken down, it would, it takes courage to stand up against that system that has been in place for a long time, and that you as that person who, it's almost like today, Colin Kaepernick, takes a knee when the Pledge of Allegiance is on, or taking place, and to be a person who's standing almost alone, everybody's looking at you like, "Why are you doing this?" I guess it would take, guts for that, or John Carlos's, Tommy Smith, putting their fist up in the air in I think it was the '68 Olympics. It took some guts to do that, or even Muhammad Ali saying, "You know what? I'm not going. Take my draft card. I ain't going to that war." Because, there are financial penalties that he had to incur for being that person, and say, he even had quotes, and why should I go and fight for the white man when I can't even come home and eat at the counter or something? So it just took a lot to do stuff like that. And so how was the Hammond residents? How was their reception towards you? How were you treated differently after a while?
Well, they always liked me, so that was good. But they were always proud of me, because I told them once I said, "Now, I worked hard, even when I was, in school, going to school, I worked hard so that I could be the first black teacher, and I will not make you ashamed of me." So they believe that.
And that's good. So, have any other kids who wanted to follow the path of educator and teacher come up to you and expressed their appreciation for what you did?
Oh yes, there have been people that I didn't even teach. There have been people that I taught. I have had people who I didn't even teach who come up and thanked me. So it just makes me feel good. But they just always liked me. And then when I became a teacher, they just showed me the greatest respect. And they still do.
Okay. And that's actually good. I'm sure that what's important about this, just this conversation, is that I think the younger generation has got to know that they shouldn't take a lot of these things that we have for granted, because as even with the Little Rock Nine, where they're fighting to get into class to go to school, and this was after the Brown versus Board of Education in 1957, they were fighting to be integrated into Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas, and the governor actually sent I think it was the National Guard out there to. The Little Rock Nine thought they were helping them because there was mobs of people out there protesting, but the governor sent his troops out there to stop them from actually going in the classroom, when Eisenhower had to turn right back around and send the 101st Airborne out there to literally trump the National Guard and say, no, it's a law and it's passed. We went to court. It was Brown versus Virgin Education, and it's there. So they're going into class, and then for that entire year, all these kids were escorted by. They were assigned a guard, a troop person, and went to class all year long. And so the fact that in 2016, there are black people, kids who are cutting class and doing this, that, and the other, have no appreciation for the fight to get in class.
Right, that is so sad, I think. So sad.
Yeah, so I think that this little bit of history with certain things that I'm bringing up, it's not just that school. I mean, there's a number of universities and schools that were had to be integrated and due to this segregation thing, that needs to be appreciated, and not just appreciated, but we have to. I think the younger generation have to respect what their elders have done. So then they can just, if they took a second just to think about the fight and all this, they wouldn't do some of the things they do. That is, it is a privilege to actually go to class to learn. Because if you look back even further, they would see that it was actually against the law to teach a black person to read and write and speak King's English, and you could be punished for doing that, and the blacks could be killed or hung for doing that. And the fact that Reverend Burns saw 2 lynchings of a little black boy who literally asked a question to a white girl who was killed for doing that, you would then have to have some appreciation for Hammond High or any school that houses black people, and to go and do your part. And I just don't think that their part is that hard. And to see that you set a goal when you were in elementary school to say, I want to be a teacher. And that was, that's like Obama saying, I want to be president. It wasn't even in the concept or the thinking, the dream of certain people. And to see that you went on to be a teacher, and then he went on to be a president, against all odds. So that's and I'm sure Miss Clinton, Hillary Clinton, is as far as being the first woman, is another hurdle that some people maybe not agree with that, and certainly it will come out in the election that's coming up in, I guess, 50 or 60 days from now, as to if that's going to happen. But I think that I would think that she would have a shoe in because her opponent is an idiot. So, but I shouldn't say that on record. But,
I agree.
but with all the stuff that he has done, it would appear hear that it's almost a shoe-in if you're reasonable.
I hope so. I really hope so.
And I just think that if he were to have been, I don't think he has the temperament to be president. And as Hillary already said, you don't want him close to a button that would push. That would blow up anything. I think his mouth alone will get us in a war.
I think so too.
But some of these first, I think it's important for to hear all of these first, and that the younger black generation in 2016, which is when we're doing this interview, can understand that these black people who are the first around Hammond, Indiana, opened up doors for various things. Even Dennis, the first police officer, Ronnie Rowe, opened up the doors for other police officers after that. Even Paul Walker, who I think he was. I think Paul Walker was the first lieutenant or person who moved up the ranks and was a higher. And but all of these first are important to know that when the younger generation see you guys, at the park. See, it was Maywood Park, but now it's Martin Luther King Park. But and at the time, if to see all of these people walking down the street, to know that they actually are, or you are actually, part of our heroes of yesteryear that have paved the way for what's happening kind of now. If they really strip down all of the rhetoric and stuff, they'll see what you guys have done. And it's important to be some of the first of who have done certain things in Hammond, and even Reverend Burns, who opened up the doors for even buying a house for black people and getting the funding for certain people, well, all black people in Hammond. So that's kind of an important step. And so all of these, from Pearline Jenkins to all of the people who are the activists and the fighters who, and at that time, we do suffer opposition now, but before it was much more explosive because they can say it right in front of your face. We don't want black people. I mean, now it's more of a hidden agenda. With the redlining and this, that, and the other. But we definitely appreciate, you and what you've done. And although now you're saying, I guess you're 79 and close to 80, you may have forgotten, really the impact of what you've done. But we haven't forgotten it. And I actually was telling people, I was like, okay, I got to interview Annie Hicks, but I'm going to interview her after I do a number of interviews because, not that you were intimidating, it's just that you're one of the first, and it was so significant and important to me and then to all of the residents of Hammond.
So how did you get the names of us?
By talking to people. I was just asking who's, and my dad told me, Robert Martis, he told me, about you, and then everybody I talk to says your name, so I can't even Albertine Dent. Did you get Annie? It's just a number of people.
Oh, I see.
And so once I get these names, I put them down because this project was basically a project that. I think I just felt that a person, myself, coming from Hammond, coming from Conkey Street, the street that everybody kind of looked down upon, and although I lived on the 900 block, but just like Reverend Burns forbid you guys from going down there, I was forbidden too. When I was growing up, it's like don't you stay down here, kind of thing. You don't know what's going to happen down there. So, And so it's that street is an infamous street in Hammond. Everybody knows Conkey Street. And but then there were some good things that happened on Conkey Street for me. When Kennedy was running for office, he had a parade, and not a parade, but he campaigned, and so we lined up Conkey Street, and he literally drove down Conkey Street.
Oh.
And do you remember that?
No.
He did that, and I was a little boy at the time, and I used to build. My hobby was building like planes and cars and stuff, like model planes and stuff.
Yeah,
and so I had a prized possession, my prized possession model that I had, and I remember as a little boy when Kennedy came in front of the house, because we were right there. It was in front of this, right next to Androff. There was a Polish place right there.
Yeah.
And my mom said, "Okay, go ahead and do it." And so I took my plane. My model. It was actually a ship. And then I ran up to him. And since I was a kid, I was not a threat. And so the guards let me hand him my model, and he took it from me. And that was the time I wish there was an iPhone around because I didn't have a picture of it. It's just now all in my mind and the people around, my mom's mind, and but we know that it happened. So, but I wish I had that. It's like that picture of little John under the desk when you see. That was my picture, which I didn't have. It's all in my mind now. But so those were good memories of Conkey Street for me. And so it wasn't all crazy. Now, I have some other crazy memories of Conkey Street, but we won't talk about them. But all of these, the project, I think, is a project that is geared to uplift Hammond, especially the African Americans or the black citizens of East Hammond specifically, and to let people know that there were blacks who were pioneers who paved the way in East Hammond for change, and from the few blacks who came and infiltrated the neighborhood and created uplifting senses of who we were and who we are, and more so that the theme of it takes a village to raise a kid, and that's what we all kind of touched, and I just know that every person in Hammond that my mom knew, and even if you didn't know, had the right to spank me. And then tell my parents, and then I get another spanking when I get home. So she wasn't.
We did too, and then my dad being a pastor of church, I'm gonna tell Reverend Burns.
Oh yeah, I'm sure
that too. Same thing as you. Yeah.
It was just a time period where that everybody had that same ethical and moral obligation to look out for all the kids in the neighborhood, and so they looked out and just looked at the well-being of that kid in terms of learning and discipline and all that, and say they really cared, and they didn't really whoop you because that's they just wanted to do it. Is because they cared enough to say, you know what, I want you to grow up to be a better person. And I'm going to discipline you now. They say spare the rod, spoil the child. So I'm going to discipline you now in hopes that you're a better person later.
That's true. That's true.
So, and that was even though that's a African proverb, and but it bled over to different tribes in Africa. Because there was another tribe that said if you, it was a Nigerian tribe, but anyway, it takes more than one knee to raise a child. Meaning, some other people have to sit you down on their knee and give you whatever they need to give you. So, and then that bled over from Africa to literally all over the world, because Africans, if you look at the slave trade, we were sent all over the world. I think the largest other place was Brazil that Africans had gone to. But if you look at even Mexico, there are black Mexicans. There Asia to Cuba to all over the world, blacks went. And so we took not only our proverbs and our way of thinking, but we also took our music and the beats, the drums, the this, that, and the other, so which infiltrated all of our culture today.
Exactly.
So, but yeah, so if there's, I guess in closing, if there's any other like stories or inspiration that or ideas that you want to give a child, because once again, this is going to be transcribed and placed within the library. And if there's anything that you would want them to read for generations to come, even though you're almost 80, when you're 110, we want to say, hey, you can go look at my stuff in the library.
Okay, now, because I for a while I had a little business, and so I did some educational materials, so maybe I'll put some of that together too.
Okay, yes, all of that. And what we plan on doing is just, you can keep your docs, but we'll scan them, or you can have them scanned into a PDF file. And because we'll have documents that will be able to be downloaded and researched, because now if a high school student goes to the library and wants to research African Americans who started out in East Hammond and did certain things and this, that, and the other, there's very few documents. But we wanted to make volumes of these transcriptions available so they can research accomplishments, and because we're looking for people who just did just the first, like all first anything. Then people who've gone on to national exposure, like Irv Cross, doing various things. And athletes who've gone on who do certain things. Musicians have gone on to do various things. And even up to this time period, people like Jeff Morrow, who is he does voiceovers, he's a singer, and this, that, and the other, and he just did something for the Fox hit show Empire, and so he is a person who's gone on to do all these things. And we, like I said, we want to spotlight the athletes who have come from here, and even Dwayne McClendon, who probably learned his hurdling from Knapp McClendon, his uncle, Napoleon, and who just, and that's how younger generation look at the older generation and either are inspired or emulate whatever they see. Now, they can see bad too, and then they'll do whatever they see, So, and then I guess we're just influenced by what's around us, because you were trying to remember some of the Polish words, and based on the influence that you had from your next door neighbors talking Polish all the time, and to this day my mom still says these Polish words.
She does?
Because she was in terms of working at, she was one of what's his name, one of the police chiefs. I think his name was Mahoney.
Okay.
Yeah, and she worked for him. She was his secretary there, and then she went on to work at the city hall. She was one of the first people who worked for the courts. Judge Mahoney. No, Judge Stodola.
Okay.
Stodola.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, she worked for him, and then she became. She went on to work for HUD there. And then that's how I got to California. Is that she then became the first black regional director for HUD. Black woman. I'm sorry, black woman. I'm sure there may be other black people, but the first black woman to handle area Region 9, which is California, Nevada, Hawaii, Guam, Arizona, or whatever. So these first are, they're kind of important to just to know that people have broken down the doors and this, that, and the other, and so and ironically, I haven't even interviewed her yet. I need to do that because she's right under my nose, and she goes, I don't remember all that stuff. That's what she said. So I said, well, you better start remembering because I need to record this.
Yes, you do.
But
now I want to tell you, McClendon was the one that was NAACP president before Mrs. Jenkins.
William, was it Bill McClendon, the Wayman's father?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, there it is. And and that whole family was movers and shakers and stuff because they've done a lot of stuff. And obviously the neighborhood. It's 2016, but the neighborhood, East Hammond, has changed somewhat because the same fiber is it's inside of the older generation's minds and thoughts and stuff. But some things have changed. Like it might not be as safe to purely walk down the street at midnight,
right.
Because of whatever influences happen, because of the younger generation who have kind of lost themselves, and so and I'm hoping that some of these, or these interviews and what we're trying to do, help instill another sense of pride and accomplishment, and so that they would look out for each other, but more so look out for just black people in general, because once the man has deemed to divide and conquer, and he has placed certain things in place to divide and conquer, he is actually winning. And as we know that Indiana was big, the southern part of Indiana was big on Klan activity.
Right.
And at this point, I would argue that some black people are on autopilot because the Klan have already said, they were there to kill black people, and or not just black people, with Jewish people and gay people, anyone who doesn't fit their paradigm. But we're on autopilot in terms of they don't even have to buy bullets anymore. We buy our own bullets and get rid of ourselves. So it's like, why should we spend money on that bullet? So we have to change that mindset somehow, and I know that it can be changed. And some people have said that, well, those people came from Chicago and this, that, and the other, and the Cabrini Greens were torn down, and they had to go somewhere, and so they went to Chicago, East Chicago, Gary, Hammond, and the outskirts and stuff like that, and they took the mentality with them. But I just think that it's almost like the man has created an infrastructure for us to hate ourselves and to continue to struggle. And when we're struggling, we basically want the things that everyone else has. But if you're not willing to do the work to get to that point, it's hard to. If you didn't go to your school in Hessville, then in Hammond, then Ball State, and then still have the mindset of, I'm going to do this big thing that no one has done before, and then work towards it. It's hard to accomplish that goal without, what do they say in the Bible? They say prayer without works is like an illusion, or won't happen, or it won't work. You can pray about it, but you can pray for a job, but unless you go out and go find it, job is not going to knock on your door. Talking about job here, was it? But I think that the mindset can be changed. I don't think that we can give up. And although it's hard, I know all over the city, we're dealing with the Black Lives Matter scenario. So it's black on black crime, and then it's police doing their deeds to stop the progression of black people. But I just think that we're too powerful of a person, of a people, to to accept what what Donald has even said. You black people, you don't have jobs. You don't have this. I don't know if you heard this. The first debate the other day, but he said all kind of crazy stuff. But what he's done is he's grouped all black people into struggling, live in the ghetto. And what that tells the rest of the world is that all black people are this. This is the definition of black people. And there are places every place that black people live is not a ghetto. In Maryland, there are all kinds of cities. There are all kinds of cities that have affluent black neighborhoods and communities.
Right.
There's Shaker Heights in Cleveland, Ohio. There's Baldwin Hills in Los Angeles. There's tons of places all over, but he's not utilizing that, and he's saying that black people don't have jobs. Well, there's a lot of black people that have jobs, and there's a lot of black people who have great jobs, and although I'm not discounting that it's bad, collectively for all of us, but you can't build an illusion that every black person is struggling and bad, because then there's nothing to aspire to be,
Right, that's right.
So, and the people rise up against adversity all the time. Like Oprah, she had adversity. She rose up, and she did what she did. And Michael Jordan rose up, and even Dwayne Wade. His mother was in drugs and crack and all kinds of stuff, but yet he rose up to do what he does. And and we have talent to do various things. And I just think, in closing, I think that if the younger black student who is not really into history would stop for a second and look at civilization, black civilization in Africa prior to here, they would know that the Moors created they civilized Europe, when they came in and started to make the corrals and this, that, and the other, because, the Europeans were living with their animals, and they said, that's why there's chicken pots. You got chickens running around here. So they would put cows where they're supposed to build it, and not just that, build they put the lights on the streets, the sidewalks, and this, that, and the other, and and once you know that we did so many things from masonry stuff to the stars. Benjamin Banneker. He built Washington D.C.
Right.
With the design.
I made a little book like that for little kids.
Yes, and see, once they see a black man does that, building clocks and all that, and they even say that Big Ben in London, the clock in London, was even named after Big Ben or Benjamin Banneker. So there's just so many things that we've done that would just, if the younger generation could see certain things from the blood plasma to all the different, from the stoplight to it's like it's daunting to know all of the different. But see, what happens is that those things aren't taught in school in terms of accomplishments of black people, and so that little black student who's sitting there in this chair, when he learns about Nina, the Pinta, and Santa Maria, Christopher Columbus coming here and discovering America, you would just for a second say, well, wait a minute, there were Native Americans here prior to that, and there were Africans here too. And once you know that Africans had they created the longitudes and latitudes. They were already here before it happened. In fact, Christopher Columbus had a black navigator showing him various things, and so they circumnavigated the globe before Christopher Columbus and all this. But we only hear about Christopher Columbus. That's why we got Thanksgiving, whatever. But and I would just, and that's by design, because if you lessen or diminish the accomplishments of black people, then you will then say, well, we're not worth X, Y, and Z. When in fact, we did have X, Y, and Z, and we're worth more than X, Y, and Z. So
that's right.
So I think the younger generation should hear and see and do and research this. And one of the key things in these transcripts is to find out words that people have used, like your dad had. Well, obviously I didn't interview him, but your mom, I interviewed Mary Burns, and she used some Mason-Dixon line once they got past Mason-Dixon line, and things they could relax a little bit because things happened before Mason-Dixon line, and so when they hear certain words like that, I'm hoping that teachers would get them to research certain things in terms of history, because Hammond right now still has a lot of history walking its streets. People going to the Korean War, World War I, Vietnam, and just to know, what were those wars all about? And that person who's sitting in Maywood Park or Martin Luther King Park right now, but if they're sitting there, to know that if they were in the Korean War, what was that war about? And how does it affect them? And what was the embarkation or demarcation line between North Korea and South Korea? And were they fighting for that? Why were they fighting for that? And why did the Chinese actually help them, help the Koreans? So these are questions that can relate to a person walking the streets in Hammond. It's like, and you try, some people say, well, that's a stretch. How do the Chinese, relate to a black person walking? Well, that black person was fighting in the war as a gunner, as a paratrooper, as a whatever, and they helped America in that. And some people say, well, they shouldn't have been there in the first place. Well, that's another story. But, they shouldn't have been in a lot of wars that we're in. But that didn't diminish our contributions as black people.
Right. Now, I want to ask you, you said something about PDF. What's that?
PBS?
I thought you said PDF.
A PDF, I'm sorry. A PDF is, once you get documents, like hard paper documents, you can scan those documents, and so it becomes just a digital file. And digital files can be duplicated without degradation of quality 1 billion times. Like a JPEG is a picture. Like if you scan a picture, it's like a JPEG. But it's a digital duplication of or replication of whatever the original was. So that's why if you were to say the deposition that you were talking about, well, you know what? That deposition is important because, if one wanted to say what actually transpired in court, and, there's a lot of suppositions and people saying, well, this happened, that happened, but unless you read the deposition, you really don't know what happened, because what reporters do is they'll capsulize. Well, this is what happened in court in 2 minutes. In special social media, if you're using Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or whatever, you get these truncated versions of what happened. And then, it's like the old thing, if you said a phrase to a person and they said it in someone else's ear, and then 60 people later, you find out that phrase has changed or morphed into some other phrase. And so, but if you see a digital file or a PDF of, say, the transcript of the deposition, you know specifically what happened, because there's somebody typing every single word of what happened. The questions, the answers, the replies, what is admitted into evidence, what are the exhibits that one used. And even though it was a hearing, that's still a documented legal court document. And in any court hearing, that there are depositions or any filings or motions is part of public record, and people could go and research that and eventually download those records. from somewhere. They're available. But what I'm saying is that, hey, if we have all those documents that deal with East Hammond and its residents and this, that, and the other in terms of accomplishments or whatever in one space, they won't have to look through microfiche and all that kind of stuff. It's right there.
Oh, okay.
So any articles that you have too, and at one point too, if you, I'll ask Eunice if she has a scanning capabilities.
Okay.
And if she doesn't, maybe Victor does. I talked to Victor too.
You mean Vincent?
Vincent.
Because Victor is my brother, but he's gone.
Okay, yeah. No, Vincent. And then Charles.
Oh, yeah.
Too. I know Charles, too. So,
you do?
Yeah. So, you were the missing link. Everybody but you. No, I'm just kidding. So I even spoke to Crystal. She didn't remember me, though. But and she came in there when I was interviewing, or I was in your mom's house.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so we'll get all this together. But and then if by chance you remember any other significant thing, write it down and just say, hey Bob, I just remembered da 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 da. And then if you write all of the subject matters down, I can do another one because I enjoy talking to you too. But
okay.
But I want to really thank you for taking the time and talking to me about this. And I know at one point you were sounded like you were a little apprehensive, like, what is this guy going to ask me? But I think it's all good. I think we got some good information.
Well,
and,
I hope so.
Yeah, no, it was all good.
At first I was a little nervous, so.
Oh, no, see? It didn't even hurt, did it?
No. But I enjoyed talking to you. You're so interesting.
Oh, well, it was good for, and you know what? It's good for me, but it's good for people after we're long and gone and they go into the library. That's what.
Okay.
That's why I'm doing it.
Okay.
But thank you a million.
All right, thank you.
Okay, you be cool. Bye-bye.
You too. All right, bye.